Welcome to the Cold Case Christianity broadcast, the only Christian case-making program hosted by a cold case homicide detective. J. Warner Wallace has been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Court TV, and Dateline. For more information about Jim's work and the case for Christianity, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. Now, here's your host, J. Warner Wallace.
Thanks for joining us again at Cold Case Christianity. I am J. Warner Wallace. We are in Season 6 of our show here on NRB TV, and I am going to be spending part of this season really just talking about the nature of young people and why it is we need to work so hard to stem the tide of departure of young people from the church. What is the real truth about that? We talked about that in the last episode a little bit. So we've written a lot about this on our website, and I want to kind of direct you to that for what today's topic is going to be, because today we're going to be talking about 5 ways you can help your kids grow in their confidence. As a Christian, 5 ways you can help your kids grow in their confidence. And I think that it's important to spend part of this season talking about these things, because the reality of it is we are seeing a departure of young people from the church. And we all know it anecdotally, and now we know it statistically, given the surveys that have been done and the studies that have been done over the last 10 to 15, 20 years. So it's not a new phenomena, it's not a recent phenomena, but it's a real phenomena. And what we're going to talk about today is I've actually written on a website, on a page on our website, so I'll show it to you. It's just 5 ways to help your kids grow in their Christian confidence. You can find it right on our website. This is when I first posted it. I think it's actually by now it'll be posted, so you'll see it. The only people who have actually read that article, I think, are me, because it wasn't live yet. But now it is live, so you'll see that thousands of people have actually read the article, and I want you to be able to download it. If you notice on our website, every page has got a PDF file download button, and when you hit that, it saves it in the PDF form. I'll show you. It's a much simpler version of it that allows you to print it out without any of the sidebar stuff, without any of the menu stuff, so that you can refer to this later. All of our data, all of our articles are created that way, so you can easily download the material and keep it for yourself, use it with others, send it to others, whatever you want to do with it. Now, I can tell you also that Sean McDowell and I have written a book called So the Next Generation Will Know. So the Next Generation Will Know, in which we're talking about a lot of this. As a matter of fact, this short podcast today is an abbreviated version of stuff we've written about in one chapter of our book. So I want to be able to kind of just whet your appetite a little bit, because this is a cause all of us ought to be embracing. And when we first started thinking about this book, we thought about it just in terms of youth pastors. I was a youth pastor. Sean is an educator, a high school teacher. At least for some time he was. And so we have a heart for young people. And I honestly thought, well, I want to help other youth pastors. He has a heart to do that as well, especially as we teach apologetics at Biola University. Maybe even an entire program just for youth pastors. But the reality of it is that youth pastors cannot carry this burden alone. We cannot continue to drop our kids off at youth ministries in the church and think that 45 minutes they're going to have with the youth pastor once a week is going to contribute to their spiritual formation and be the end of it. No, we have a responsibility as parents. And not only that, a responsibility within the church as the parents, at least the older family members of young people who are part of our church family. So I'm going to give you today 5 ways that you can help raise up confident Christians who actually know what they believe and are willing to stand tall, even though these claims, the claims that Christianity makes, are less and less popular with every passing year. And it's going to require more of our students, a little more fortitude from our students. And I'm going to start before the break with the first of 5, because I think this is probably the most important one. And so I just want to give it to you. If you're going to increase the confidence of your young people, either in your church or in your family, in your youth pastorate, in your Christian high school, you're going to have to do something quite simple, and that is this: make a commitment. Make a commitment to actually put young people and make young people your priority. And I thought to myself when we first started writing So the Next Generation Will Know, Does anybody really care if they don't have young people in their sphere of influence to begin with? In other words, if you're not a youth pastor and a Christian educator and a high school teacher or an elementary school teacher or whatever it may be, and if you're not a Christian parent of this age group, and we're talking about Gen Z, which is typically between the ages of 3 to 20, if you don't have somebody in junior high or in high school, why should you care? Well, I think we care because we realize that most of us, if nothing else, would say it bothers us that it seems that Christianity, the influence of the Christian worldview, is waning in America or wherever it is you live. More than likely, you're seeing that Christianity is probably on the decline rather than on the rise. There are only a few places in the world, in the Southern Hemisphere mostly, where it's the opposite. But right now, in the Western world, it was kind of like we're over it. We've already been there, done that. And Christianity, for the large part, is waning. If you're a Christian, that bothers you, right? It bothers me. So how do we stem that? How do we change that? Well, it turns out that it used to be, this idea that 85% of Christians became Christians by the age of 18. Only 15% became Christians after that. I, as a 35-year-old coming to faith, I'm in a much shorter category, smaller category of people who would even come to faith, because most people come to faith before the age of 18. Well, it turns out there's good research now out there that demonstrates, and we talk about this in the book as well, that age has dropped quite a bit, from about 18 to about 12. The vast majority of people who become Christians by the time they get into middle school. And after that, it's harder. Why? Because we all have the glowing rectangle, the smartphone in our hand that provides a certain level of skepticism that was never available to young people before. We have to help young people. If we are concerned about the future, you'll make much more progress working with young people than you will with people my age. Young people are the key to the future. And by the way, this is an exponential key. Here's why. It turns out that the vast majority of theistic believers globally believe what they believe because largely their parents believed it. You realize that you have a far better chance of being a Christian if you were raised in a Christian household. Yet, a generation that walks away from the church, well, number one, they've walked away from the church, so they're no longer in the statistics, but more importantly, they're not raised in a Christian household. They're not raising kids within the faith. This becomes an exponential problem going forward. It's not a linear problem. It curves up dramatically. We have to be able to address the issue, see it as a priority, and make it our first commitment in the church. That's right, our first commitment in terms of how we staff church leadership, how we staff programs, how we fund programs. We have to focus on young people if we care about the future. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll give you 4 more ways you can grow your kids in the church to be confident in what they believe.
Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. We interview the world's leading apologists to provide credible answers to curious questions.
Does biological appearance or the appearance of biology point to a designer?
Yeah, even adamant atheists like Dawkins will say that all of biology is an effort to explain the appearance of design, even though he would reject the existence of a divine designer. So I think that there is an appearance of design, which is kind of stipulated by most people who are looking at this kind of stuff. And then the question is, how do we explain? I actually think there are 8 attributes of a design, and I kind of illustrate these in my book, God's Crime Scene, but without going into all the detail. And when you see attributes of design like irreducible complexity, like the insufficiency of natural causes, like the improbability of chance, like the kind of pattern recognition, when we see something we know is design, and this thing looks just like that, why would we reject a designer? There are a number of things. I think 8 things, when they come together, they most reasonably indicate that we have a designer. If we saw these 8 things in a bird's nest, even if we only saw 5 of the 8 things, we would infer reasonably that a designing bird is at work. And in every bird nest, when you see it, has enough design present. 5 of these 8 things exist. I can infer design. Well, there are many micro machines in biology. Michael Behe probably made one famous, the bacterial flagellum is probably the most famous of these. And as he points to these structures, and there are many of them, he notices certain features of design. Well, I think that 8-feature template that I talked about can be applied to those. And when it is, you see that this is actually most reasonably explained as the act of a designer. Now, for example, it's the fact that it's informationally driven. If you know these things are driven by DNA, DNA genomes that require an intelligent source. You've got good reason to believe you've got an intelligent designer involved. Of course, the problem is if there's an intelligent designer, that designer may have requirements for our life, may actually be interested in us as humans. And I think a lot of us reject the appearance of designer because we don't like the idea that this designer might be involved in our own lives. So, but I think in the end, the most reasonable inference is not a lack of something, a lack of explanations from naturalism, because they can't explain these features. It's the positive appearance of design features in biology that give us the most reasonable inference that there is a designer behind the design itself.
Okay, first approach, make a commitment. Second approach, start early. Start early. We talked about this in the last segment, right? How it turns out most young people who become Christians, there's good data now that says that 85% at 18 is now more likely 85% at 12. Again, it's all coming down to where skepticism is first encountered. Maybe in the past, 18 was the first year you encountered a skeptic at university. But now you can encounter a skeptic the minute you give your kid a phone. They've got access to all the skeptics. Try this. Google something online about Christianity and tell me if the first page isn't, instead of being the affirmative case for that issue in Christianity, it's the negative skeptical case against Christianity. If you type in about the triune nature of God or whatever it may be, you're more likely to encounter all the articles that have been written and all the YouTube videos that have been made that are against the Christian worldview right alongside, if not in priority, to those videos and articles that make an affirmative case for whatever that topic is you're searching. This is the nature of the world our kids are living in. And you think, well, I'm not going to give my kid a phone until he's a certain age. Really? Does he have friends? Does she have friends? Are you planning on locking them down without having any access to their friends? Because their friends happen to have the phones that you don't want your kids to have. And now you're just voicing the skepticism they're encountering. Often, if you look at some of the largest YouTube channels that deal with issues related to God, you'll see that many of them are the atheist channels. And this is what our young people are looking at. We got to start early with them. Also, we have good data. And when we ask young people, when did you check out? When did you become, if you started off in the church, when did you decide it wasn't true? The data shows us it's between the ages of 10 and 17. 10 and 17. 10 is the 5th grade. We're talking about upper elementary. For sure, by the time, I tell people all the time, if you think you're going to have a Christian a high school in which you're going to prepare young Christians for university, and you're thinking, well, I'll teach them apologetics in their junior or senior year of high school, no, we got to start like in junior high, because that's where they're first encountering the skeptical objection. Look, I used to always say that what the problem we have is that for the most part, none of us really want Christianity to be true, right? It puts certain limits on all the ways we could explore sexuality or all the behaviors we can engage. There are moral limits that come along with the Christian worldview that I think most young people wish that didn't exist, especially when the culture is saying, really? You think that about marriage? You think that about gender? You think that about sexuality? We're holding unpopular positions. It turns out that the tail that wags the dog in a lot of skepticism is our desire to have complete moral autonomy. Right? That happens early. And we're going to have to start early with young people. I know that that's the urge, that's kind of the tail that's wagging this dog of skepticism, and I know they're going to hear skepticism out there in the environment. I know if they leave, I always used to say this, if they leave the Christian worldview for a season because they want to chase their passions, I understand the temptation. I understand the pressures of that. That's on you. If you're going to do that kind of stupid's on you. But if you're leaving Christianity because you don't believe it's factually true, that's on me as your youth pastor, as your parent. I get it. People will leave the Christian worldview because they don't want it to be true. But if they're leaving because they don't think it's true factually, that's something we can actually address. What I love is that when young people I have trained in youth ministry will tell me later that even though they had a season of wanting to explore their passions, they knew from our time together that it was true. So they didn't want to run too far because they knew in the end that they were just chasing their passions and they knew this was true. It's time for us to help our young people early to hear the objection from us before they hear it from someone else. That's number 2. Make a commitment. Start early. Number 3, take on the tough issues. We can't do what we just said, tackle skepticism before they hear it out there, if we're not willing to take on the tough issues in here, both in the church and in our family. We got to be able to engage in these conversations. From the PDF file that's on the website, the one I showed you, I want to read to you from a recent survey what the objections have been from young people who have left the church. Listen to what they're saying. What scientific proof do you have that God exists? This is from the mouths of young people who are taking these surveys, these studies, and responding freely to what their skepticism is. Why should I believe in miracles? If evolution is true, why should I believe in God? Why should I trust something on faith when I could use reason? Why should I trust what you or my pastor has to say about Christianity? How is believing in God any different than believing in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny? Why does science seem to contradict all the claims of Christianity? Why would an all-powerful, all-loving God allow so much messed up evil in the world? How can I be sure that Jesus really rose from the grave? If that's so important, the resurrection, how can I be sure? And if Christianity is true, why are so many Christians a bunch of hypocrites? Why is the history of Christianity filled with so much violence? Finally, why should I care about any of this to begin with? Look, these are the objections that young people, these are the voiced concerns that young people have. And sometimes youth pastors hear them before their own parents hear them. Especially if they don't feel they have the freedom or they're going to disappoint their parents. Young people sometimes seek a trusted source. How many of us as trusted sources, though, can even answer those questions? I have a test at forensicfaithbook.com. I wrote a book called Forensic Faith. And if you read that book, you'll see that I've tried to help you see why it's so important for you to master these claims. And on our website at forensicfaithbook.com, you'll see I have a test. 7 questions. I give you 21 minutes to answer it. If you don't feel comfortable answering those 7 questions thoroughly, you know you have some work to do. But I just read you a bunch of questions that young people are asking. We got to ask ourselves, are we ready to answer those questions? Are we prepared to take on tough issues? If they're not asking them, that's okay. I usually find a way to put these questions out there for my young people before they ever ask them. They're probably thinking about them. They just haven't verbalized them. Do you know what the tough questions are that you can verbalize for your students if they're not ready to verbalize it themselves? Let's do that so our young people can gain their confidence. Take a break. I'll give you 2 last things to do after this short break. Look, I'll tell you this. As I travel around the country and do a number of speaking engagements all over the country, this is what I'm seeing. Because I have asked this question a number of times. I have asked the question of my audiences, why are you a Christian? I needed to know that. It started to be, as I made this case, I realized that people weren't even sure why they needed to make a case. So I started asking them, why are you a Christian? I got the same answers over and over again. It was really compelling for me. It taught me something. The answers I would get repeatedly, number one answer, without a doubt, number one answer, by a long margin, is I was raised this way. My parents were Christians, raised in the church. That is the most popular. Do you realize that is still the most popular reason why anyone believes anything? Did you know that? Most people hold a view of the world because their parents held it. That's just true for everyone who holds any worldview. You are more likely to adopt the views of your parents than any other source. Even today, with all the power and influence of education and media and everything else. The second most popular answer is this experience answer. I've had some experience that demonstrated to me that Christianity was true. Now, that sounds like good answers, and they can be good answers. But those are the same answers my Mormon family gives me. Why are you a Mormon? Well, because I was raised this way. I've been in the church my whole life. And I've had an experience of the Holy Spirit that demonstrated for me the Book of Mormon is true and Joseph Smith is a prophet of God. Well, we don't believe that Mormonism is true. As a matter of fact, it's demonstrably false on the basis of a good document evidence, good DNA evidence, good archaeological evidence. It's demonstrably false. Yet their answers sound like ours. We can do better than that. And if we're going to learn and study about the resurrection, we're going to have to take an evidential approach. We're going to have to be able to make a case, understand what the rules of evidence are, and how we use evidence to make cases, and that's what we're going to teach you in the next 7 sessions.
Need a speaker for your next conference, retreat, training seminar, or church service? Jim travels around the country making the case for the existence of God, the deity of Jesus, and the reliability of the Bible. He'd love to partner with you to create a powerful, transformational training experience. Just visit the Cold Case Christianity website and click the Book Me tab. You'll find everything you need to know, including a list of Jim's speaking topics, promotional materials, Jim's speaking calendar, and a link to connect with our team so we can book your event.
Okay, 2 more points, 2 more approaches we need to take with young people to help them grow in their Christian confidence. This next one may seem like obvious as well, but these are things we got to keep in mind because we have a tendency to mess these up. And that is, I want you to be patient. Be patient with your young people. Be super, super patient. I say this because I was not a Christian myself until I was 35. If you'd have met someone the year before I became a Christian, I had no desire to go to church, no interest in any of this stuff. I think it's pretty common with cops that if we have a sense that we think, hey, we're not bad guys, we're the good guys, right? Because we put bad guys in jail. So it's kind of hard to convince, it would have been hard to convince me that I really had any part of my nature that really needed a Savior to begin with. So I was not interested in going to church. But at 35, now I'm sure there were people who were probably praying for me. But how long did they wait? I guarantee if you asked anybody who knew me at 34, they'd say this dude's never going to be a Christian. Yet here I am. Now why does that be patient? I'm a little more patient with my own kids because I recognize that wherever they are now in their late 20s, early 30s, I was nowhere near where they are now. And so I'm a little more patient with other people's kids too, because I know that this can happen at any point once you get interested in looking at Christianity. So as a parent, I want to be more open-handed in that and be a little more patient with that, a little more forgiving with that. And recognize that Scripture actually talks about it. I'll read it from the article itself. You know that Peter wrote that the Lord is not slow about His promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing for any of you to perish, but for all to come to repentance. That's in 2 Peter 3. Yeah, so it seems like we want it on our timing, right? When it may just be a matter of God's timing. So what our job is to do is to consistently be obedient into helping our kids understand the skepticism, to do all those things we talked about, right? To take on the tough issues with them, to start early with them, and to be consistent in the way we approach these topics with them, and then leave the result to God. And you're going to have to be patient because what's going to happen is, especially after you read a book or you read an article and you think, oh, I'm going to do that. Well, you start doing it and then 6 months go by and you don't feel like you're making any progress and I'm over it now because you only waited 6 months. It's like you're asking too much for me to wait much longer than that. Well, the reality of it is you're going to have to be more patient than that. This is a process. It's a lifestyle. It's not a project. It's a lifestyle. And although I like to make things, systemize things and make projects that I can see the start and the end of, well, this is really about living every day as a case maker. This is why I always say this. If you're living your life right now as a Christian, but not a Christian case maker in front of your kids, you're living this abbreviated life in front of your kids. And in the end, they're not going to grow up to be Christian case makers. That's important. By the way, it's the case maker who can defend what he or she believes. That's important for us to transition our young people from Christian to Christian case maker. That begins by you changing your everyday approach to how you engage your faith, how you speak about your faith in front of your kids. This is going to be an everyday lifestyle change. It's kind of like when you talk about diets, right? Diets never work, right? Because at some point you jump off the diet and you gain all the way back. The only thing that even approximates success in diets are lifestyle changes in which you now change your lifestyle going forward. You don't even see it as a diet, you just see it as a change in lifestyle. The same thing is true for us as Christians. Let me give you the last step in this process, okay? And that is to stay balanced, okay? You'll see, and I've even talked about this, right? I talked about how there are reasons why young people, in the last episode, they did an episode on an update on just young people using all the surveys. And by the way, if you're looking for more information on any of our old episodes, you can get that on our YouTube page. I post these on our YouTube page as well. They're entirely archived there. So just go to the YouTube page and you will see an entire list of just a playlist of just our NRB shows. And if you watch the one that talks about the update, you'll see that we list a number of reasons why young people leave the church. About 70%, we talk about this in the book as well, about 70% of the reasons why young people leave the church is factual, intellectual, rational. They don't think they can reconcile the claims of Christianity with evolution or science or what they're being taught from a secular environment. I get that. About 30% is relational. They're seeing hypocrisy. They've got a broken relationship in the church. It's so important to stay balanced when trying to give your kids confidence. Balance between the truth claims of Christianity and the relationships that spring out of Christian beliefs. So in other words, we always talk about how it's a relationship in connection with the truth claim that is the most persuasive, the absolute most persuasive. So you'll be far more persuasive with a truth claim if you've got a relationship with the person whom you're talking. You can take out the relationship and you're just another website that makes a claim. Now, you can have a relationship that's very deep, but if you can't answer the objections for young people, if you cannot give them the truth claim, well, now you got a problem because all you are is just a warm place to kind of snuggle. But they want the truth also. So as parents, as leaders, as youth pastors, as Christian educators, we need to have both of these things. Be balanced. It's a balance between relationship and truth claim. So we want to be, by the way, you can make stern corrections in your kids' behavior, but if you've got a strong relationship with them, they're far more likely to accept those corrections and actually move forward. It's those two things that have to be in perfect balance. So I want to encourage you as you're doing this. They're not a member of a company that you're like an employee. These are your kids with whom you have a relationship, and it's not all about relationship. You're going to have some truth claim knowledge, but it's not all about truth claims. You just can't. Some of us, let's face it, we have broken relationships, or the relationships are strained, especially if we waited till our high school years before we ever started to engage these issues. Start early when your relationships are best and stay balanced. Make sure you're growing your relationships as you grow your knowledge to be able to make the truth claim. All right, so there's 5 principles that I hope will help you to raise confident Christian believers for the next generation. If we could do that, we have a far better chance of stemming the tide of attrition that's occurring in the church as young people are allegedly leaving. I think they are, but it turns out it's our relationships as parents and pastors and educators that we can leverage for the kingdom, and I hope this broadcast helped you do just that. I'll see you here next week at Cold Case Christianity.
Thanks for joining us at the Cold Case Christianity broadcast. If you're interested in more information about this week's topic, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. For a thorough investigation of the reliability of the New Testament Gospels and the case for Christianity, be sure to purchase Cold Case Christianity, God's Crime Scene, Forensic Faith, and Alive.